In the movie V for Vendetta, the main character V pretends to duel his enemies while watching his favorite film, The Count of Monte Cristo. And again, in a funny scene, the same Count of Monte Cristo is referenced by one of the prisoners in the movie A Shawshank Redemption. So who is this Count of Monte Cristo and why is he so influential to make appearances in two all-time great movies? I read the book and it led me to thinking about the movies I've mentioned before and their messages, and I noticed that they have a lot of similarities. Let's talk about the story first. Our guy, the lead man of this story, is Edmond Dantes. He was a seaman before becoming this larger-than-life figure, the Count of Monte Cristo. He had a fiancée he was about to marry, a loving father who he loved dearly, and career prospects that would take care of him and his family. You see, he was the vice captain of a merchant ship, and the former captain died on the way back from getting the cargo. Dantes took command and managed to get the cargo back safely to Marseille in France. He was next up and the merchant boss Morel was very happy with him. He was about to marry his love Mercedes, a young Catalan woman. Everything was going well until all this winning brought haters. Hater number one is called Danglars. He was like an accountant on the ship and didn't want the young Dantes to have something over him. He didn't want the boy to make this promotion. He was jealous of Dantes' success and prowess. The second hater is Fernand. He wanted Dantes' girl badly and always hung around her, talking shit about him, trying to steal her while he was away. The two of them came together with a third person called Caderousse, an all-round nasty person who lived in the same building as Dantes. He didn't really have anything against Dantes, but he stood by while the two others made a plan to get Dantes out of here. On the way back, the ship made a stop to pick up a letter. The captain that was dying gave the letter to Dantes with his last wish. He wanted the letter to be delivered to a person in Paris. Dantes promised to do it. Danglars picked up this conversation and saw the letter. This letter was the beginning of Dantes' downfall. You see, the year was 1804 in France. Napoleon got defeated and was imprisoned in St. Helena. Every person who might be a Bonapartist was considered an enemy of the state. The two men wrote a letter to police saying that he was a traitor and that they could find evidence on his person. On the eve of the wedding with his fiancée Mercedes, the police arrested him on this suspicion. He was taken to the prosecutor, Villefort, and he had to explain what happened. That he had the letter because the captain asked him to deliver it, and that he didn't even open it. He showed it to Villefort, who proceeded to read the contents of the letter in silent horror. Villefort is also one of our villains. Why? Because he's a self-serving opportunist that wants to get ahead. The letter was addressed to Noirtier. Villefort read the letter and saw this name. It turns out that Noirtier is Villefort's father. So he decided to bury Dantes in prison even though he believed that Dantes didn't do it, and even told him so before reading the contents of the letter. These were the events that led to the lowest point of Dantes' life. He got locked up in the Chateau d'If and forgotten about. He did 14 years and he would have died in prison too of self-imposed starvation if it wasn't for Father Faria. The father or abbot is an Italian man of God who served one of the last remaining family members of the Spada family. Cardinal Spada had amassed a fortune a couple centuries prior and hid it on the island of Monte Cristo. The two men collaborated to find a way out of their prison, but they quickly noticed that they dug the wrong route. It was too late for Father Faria, who was sick, but before passing away, Faria had taught everything he knew to Dantes, even how to find the enormous treasure that was hidden on the island of Monte Cristo. Faria was also able to deduce who had sold him out when Dantes told his story. Dantes and Faria were able to move between each other's cells thanks to a tunnel that connected both. On the day that Father Faria died, Dantes took his corpse and hid it in his own bed. He took Father Faria's place in the body bag that was lying in Father Faria's cell unattended. The guards took the body bag on the boat out at sea. Dantes' body was thrown into the water surrounding the prison. He ripped open the bag with a knife he had forged and swam to a nearby island before being rescued by some smugglers. That is how he was able to escape and get to the fortune that would make him the Count of Monte Cristo. The Count of Monte Cristo is a tale of perseverance in the face of utter defeat. Because fate, or God, will cast you down, but maybe when a righteous man has lived a righteous life, Somehow, someway, God or fate will come true if that man has held on long enough. It happened to Dantes, and it will also happen to his former employer and boss, Morel. You see, Morel always supported Dantes, even went to talk to Villefort on his behalf. He tried to help his aging and ill father, but the father refused the help. Morel then paid for the funeral when his father died, but this good man fell on hard times. The shipping business was hard during those days. Ships with cargo could sink and your whole investment could be wiped away. It happened one too many times for Morel. The last ship he had didn't come back. Crew was saved, but they had to abandon the cargo. Morel was a well-known man in Marseille, and he was about to kill himself because he wouldn't be able to pay his outstanding debt. He would have kept the honor to himself. 1800s, honor in France is a weird thing if you read this tale. So many people want to unalive themselves when they feel disgrace. But the Count came through and helped him and his family with a new boat, new cargo, his old crew and his debts paid, plus a little something for his daughter's wedding. You see, the Count was richer than everyone. Like Mansa Musa, he could spread his arms and gold would rain. He really appreciated everything that Morel did for him and repaid it by saving his life, company and the future of his family. But you know what we're all here for. Sweet, sweet revenge. Not only did his father die in solitude, his enemies all profited from his imprisonment. Mercedes, his former fiancée, married Fernand and left Marseille because she was lonely. Danglars became a rich banker in Paris and Villefort became the king's prosecutor, the highest office he could attain. And Caderousse, I'll tell you about him shortly, because he was the one who provided the information. Caderousse lived with his wife outside of Marseille in the countryside. He was the only one who was living in relative poverty. Father Busoni, one of the many disguises of Dantes, came to visit Caderousse with the last will of Dantes. He told Caderousse that Dantes really appreciated his friends Fernand, Danglars and Caderousse. Dantes had come by a diamond by a chance, and with his dying wish he chose to give the diamond to his friends. But you got to know something about Caderousse that Dantes also knew. This man is a greedy bastard. So Caderousse told Father Busoni the real story, excusing his own behavior in the plot to cowardice. He wanted diamond for himself. Caderousse also told Dantes what happened while he was away. With this information, Dantes was able to start his journey, and I really have to salute him for the way he weaved this ruthless revenge plan. This man is righteous, but damn, you don't want to be on his bad side. He strikes with fury and great vengeance for real, all in the name of God too.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
But let us stay with Caderousse for a minute. Father Busoni told Caderousse what kind of price he could fetch for the diamond. The first thing he did was call a jeweler to sell it. The jeweler came to Caderousse's house to look at the diamond. He thought it was as valuable as the father had said, but the jeweler didn't want to pay the market price. How could a lonely man as Caderousse have come by such a thing except by stealing it? Caderousse negotiated the sale in the presence of his wife La Carconte. She told him to kill the man and steal his money instead, but Caderousse accepted the lower price and let the jeweler go. But fate would decide differently that day. It was storming and late, so the jeweler had to stay at their inn. They gave him a bed. The wife couldn't ask for a better opportunity. She went upstairs when the jeweler was sleeping. He was a cautious man and slept with 2 guns. He woke up while she stabbed him. He shot at her and mortally wounded her. Caderousse killed him subsequently and took the diamonds and money, leaving 2 dead bodies in his wake. Another man called Bertuccio was arrested for the murder because he was hiding in the inn at the time, but we'll talk about him later. Let's get back to the Count. A young man named Franz d'Épinay, who is integral to the story, was taken to Monte Cristo's cave by some smugglers and seamen. Franz d'Épinay is the son of a royalist general who served during the time of Napoleon's return and died in suspicious conditions. Franz is well known in the higher classes of Parisian society and is a man with standing. The young man was taken to Sinbad the sailor while wearing a blindfold. All the exotic wealth displayed in the cave mesmerized the young man. This encounter seemed like a dream to him. He was introduced to a substance called hashish that was so potent it made him hallucinate and see naked women. The music and hookah also added to this oriental fever dream. The Count carefully created a figure larger than life, a mysterious individual that is cultured, beyond imagination, and rich, oh so rich. He has the best food, the best horses, the best help, the most intriguing man you'll ever see. He wanted to show that to France. Franz d'Épinay was invited to the island because he served as the inside man. You know, the guy who can introduce you to a certain exclusive circles. They encountered each other again during Carnival in Rome. This is where we meet Albert de Morcerf. He is the son of Fernand and Mercedes, a young man with a good name, aristocratic title and wealth as well. His demeanor could be likened to one of those college frat boys with a lot of daddy's money, but he's quite likable after a while and has a lot of redeeming qualities. Back to the story. Monte Cristo had rented out all the horses and carriages, making it harder for Franz and Albert to find transportation for the festivities. It was one of the many situations the Count manufactured during the festival. The Count looked for ways to gatekeep all the good spots and resources in order to be of help to those two young men. His goal was to get an official invitation into Paris's high society. To do that, he called on a favor by a bandit called Luigi Vampa. The Count of Monte Cristo saved his subordinate's life by getting a pardon from the Pope. The subordinate was set to be executed publicly, but the authorities raised a white flag at the moment he was about to die. Franz and Albert witnessed the execution from the Count's balcony. They saw that he was a man of great influence. Luigi Vampa and his gang were tasked to kidnap Albert by luring him into a carriage during Carnival. One of the bandits disguised himself as a young, beautiful woman. Albert fell for the trap and was abducted by the bandits. Franz then received a ransom letter from the bandits demanding money to release him. Franz instead went to the Count. The Count saved a bandit from certain death. He knew that the bandit leader had made a deal with the Count to get this done. The Count was indeed able to help because he had orchestrated the kidnapping himself. Albert was released and Luigi Vampa even gave Albert an apology. Albert, who stayed solid in captivity, thanked the Count for everything he did for him. He asked to return the favor in any way possible, and that is how the Count got his invitation to Paris. Albert would bring him into the circle of Baron Danglars, the Count of Morcerf, and Prosecutor Villefort, the men that were responsible for taking away his life. Now is maybe a good time to talk about what happened to the three men during Monte Cristo's captivity. Danglars was always greedy and good with money. After his time with Morel, he worked his way up in a Spanish bank, married the owner's daughter, and became a widower. He remarried to a wealthy woman who we'll talk about later. He was ideally placed in the French army's commissariat during the conflicts with Spain so that he could get more wealthy thanks to the deals he made. And with the help of some lucrative speculations, he managed to accumulate enough wealth to start his own bank and exchange institution. He gave himself the name of Baron Danglars because it better reflected his social status. Fernand left for the military after Monte Cristo's incarceration. He served in the French armies post-Napoleon and he fought in Spain and gained military honor. After Louis XVIII was restored to the throne, he married Mercedes and had Albert during this time. He was employed by Ali Pasha of Janina in modern-day Albania against the Ottoman Turks. He later claimed to have fought side by side with Ali Pasha until his death. He managed to escape and brought back information about the Ottoman Turks. He even claimed to have received rewards for his service from the Pasha before he died, a large sum of money and a supposed letter of recommendation. His story and newfound wealth made it possible for him to take the title Count of Morcerf. He was able to leverage this and become a peer of France during the Restoration. He obtained a seat in the Chamber of Peers, the chamber for nobility. He lives in Paris during the events of this book. Danglars and Fernand agreed to marry each other's children. Eugénie and Albert are engaged. Villefort went on to make a lot of strides during Monte Cristo's captivity and return. He received a promotion after having sealed the fate of Dantes and proving to be loyal to the royalist faction. He became a prosecutor in Paris and continued on to become the king's attorney general in Paris. He has a daughter with his first wife that died and a son with his second wife. He is a strict man that prides himself on his effectiveness in delivering justice. He hides a dark past while masquerading as a champion of justice. It's safe to say that these three men are at the height of their reputation and wealth when the Count of Monte Cristo enters the scene. Monte Cristo quickly establishes himself as a man of great feats. Mysterious and intriguing, the game is in play. His first opponent, Danglars. The Count opened an unlimited credit line with Danglars, which was backed by IOUs from Rothschild Bank, Thomas and French in Rome, and another bank. The goal was to financially bankrupt Danglars. Danglars regularly employed his wealth to execute risky financial trades. He made a lot of money with these trades thanks to insider information. His wife fed him the information and got a share of the winnings every time he won. His wife got the information from her lover, Julien Debray, who works as an official in the Ministry of Interior. This system is disturbed by the Count of Monte Cristo when he manages to sabotage the telegram line feeding Lucien Debray information. He intercepted communication about the situation in Spain. Monte Cristo created a story. The Spanish government was under attack from insurrectionists. This made Danglars sell some of his Spanish bonds. Papers then published a fake story about the insurrection based on this doctored telegram. When the papers published a retraction of the story, prices went up again and Danglars faced a loss of almost 1 million francs. It was a big issue for him. He then asked Lucien Debray and his wife for a reimbursement, because they had to share the losses as well as the wins. The Count also interfered with Danglars' daughter Eugenie's engagement to Albert. Both parties didn't like each other. The Count knew this and offered an alternative. He paid a young man called Benedetto to play the son of a rich Italian nobleman. Major Cavalcanti and his son Andrea Cavalcanti are both paid actors for Monte Cristo's plan. The Major does not play a big part in the story. He's simply there to meet Danglars and open a credit line at Danglars' bank. The credit line serves to establish Major Cavalcanti as a rich man and big client. Major Cavalcanti leaves and wants his newfound son to find a wife. The daughter's family was promised a large sum of money. This led Danglars to alienate Fernand and soon after annul the wedding. It's a good time to tell you more about Benedetto. Danglars was salivating at the idea and it all came crashing down the night of the wedding. Everyone in Paris was invited for this wedding. Before the ceremony could take place, police officers came in to arrest Benedetto for the murder of Caderousse. You remember Caderousse, right? He was there at the betrayal of Monte Cristo, survived the struggle for the diamond and money. He escaped the law for some time until the Count was able to free Bertuccio. Bertuccio is the Count's assistant. He went to Caderousse for refuge while laying low for his smuggler activities. He was present in a hidden room. He could access the room with no one knowing. He was present during the night of the jeweler's murder and the Carcon's death. The authorities sketched him with a body and charged him for it. Abbe Busoni had managed to release Bertuccio and Caderousse was imprisoned for the crime instead. This is where he met Benedetto. They were in the same prison and escaped at the same time. When Caderousse found out that Benedetto was playing a character for the Count, he threatened to expose Benedetto unless he paid him from his allowance. It came to a point where Benedetto had set up a robbery in the Count's estate. When Caderousse tried his chance, he encountered the Count who knew about his plan. The Count spared him after Caderousse tried to take his life. He knew that Benedetto was lying in an ambush waiting for Caderousse to come out. Time was up for Caderousse. Monte Cristo had laid the fate of Caderousse's life in God's hand, and God took his life away in cruel fashion for all the crimes he committed. Benedetto was always doomed to turn out this way. He was born to Madame Baroness Danglars and M. de Villefort, the king's prosecutor. The kid was illegitimate, the two weren't married, and Villefort was about to marry a rich noblewoman. Villefort took Benedetto after Baron Danglars gave birth and tried to bury him alive during a stormy night in the yard at his old home. The Count of Monte Cristo knew about this story and bought the abandoned house that was sold to an Englishman after the crime many years prior. His assistant Bertuccio revealed what happened that night. Bertuccio was at Villefort's house that night. He was there to kill Villefort, and he thought he did just that when he heard the sound of a baby crying. That was Benedetto. He took the boy with him to his sister, leaving Villefort for dead. He had tried to kill Villefort because he did not want to prosecute his brother's death when Bertuccio sought justice. He refused and said to Bertuccio that they did not seek justice for Bonapartists that fought in duels and happened to die. Bertuccio then swore revengeance, and when he thought he had killed Villefort, he immediately felt terror. He told himself that saving Benedetto could make it right. He took the child to his sister, who took care of him. Benedetto was always evil and criminal. He formed his own juvenile gang to do crime. These boys even robbed Bertuccio's sister while he was away smuggling. Worst of all, they killed her and burned her house. He managed to stay out of the authorities' hands until he was imprisoned and met Caderousse in prison. Everything seemed to look up for Benedetto when he escaped prison. The Count had approached him to play a role. He found a rich family to marry into. He thought he would receive 1 million francs for the marriage, and he had a new identity in Paris' high society. This all came crashing down when the Count exposed him for killing Caderousse and being an escaped prisoner. He fled the scene and got caught by the law. His case was to be tried by Villefort as a prosecutor on the worst day of Villefort's life, but I'll talk about that later. Danglars was humiliated when this all happened. He had invited all of Paris' high society. He was so proud of this arranged wedding. His daughter, who I believe to be a lesbian, escaped with her female friend, taking jewelry and other valuables to fund their new life. His finances were not what they once were. He had to take on debt after his losses. His business had taken a hit and now his reputation as well. He still had 5 million francs. The Count demanded that money before Danglars had the idea to leave Paris and take it with him. Danglars received an IOU in exchange from the Count that could be exchanged at Thomas and French in Rome. Danglars soon left his wife on her own and traveled to Rome to get his money. He received the money, but it was a scam to get every single cent from Danglars. His carriage was soon attacked by a familiar bandit. Luigi Vampa was back and he imprisoned Danglars. The former banker and baron had to use all his 5 million francs except 50,000 to pay for food and drinks. He had lost his fortune before being released by Monte Cristo, who was satiated by his revenge. Opponent number 2. Villefort, as stated before, had an illegitimate baby with Madame Danglars. They both believed to never see the boy again, but the Count made sure it happened. He met Villefort's family when they asked him to come over to their house. Ali, Monte Cristo's slave, had saved Madame Villefort and a son. They were grateful and had invited the Count to their home. A peculiar conversation took place between the Count and Madame Villefort that day. They were talking about poison. The Count had vast knowledge about Eastern medicine and poison. Madame Villefort was certainly interested beyond academic purposes. She was jealous of her stepdaughter's wealth. She was to inherit her grandparents' fortune on mother's side, and she was the favorite of Mr. Noirtier, which made her also inherit his fortune. The Bonapartist father of Mr. Villefort, the man had suffered a stroke and was unable to speak or even move most of his muscles. He was in a wheelchair, and Valentine, Villefort's daughter, made sure to spend time and learn to communicate with him. Madame Villefort wanted her son to inherit all this money and not Valentine. So she took it upon herself to eliminate all those obstacles. Valentine was engaged to Franz d'Épinay. Villefort had personally chosen him. The Saint-Méran grandparents wanted to attend the wedding, and they came to Villefort's house to do exactly that. They didn't know that death was awaiting them. Madame Villefort proceeded to poison the grandfather first. He died on the way from Marseille to Paris. Madame de Villefort had poisoned him with a so-called medicine she produced and sent to him for his elderly illnesses. The man died on the road because there was brucine in the medicine. He died on the way there and seemed like he suffered a stroke. The wedding could not proceed because of this. God was already punishing Villefort for his deeds. Grandmother Marquise de Saint-Méran was the next person on the list. She was a bit tired at first, but suddenly also suffered a stroke. The doctor told Villefort there was a foul play at hand. Villefort asked him to keep it quiet. Maybe it was a coincidence. The doctor agreed to keep his suspicions to himself. Villefort wanted the wedding. Noirtier did not wish for Valentine to marry Franz d'Épinay, and he had a good reason for it. He called his notary and changed his will to deny Valentine her inheritance if she married Franz d'Épinay. Valentine didn't want to marry him either because she was in love with Maximilien Morel, the son of Dantès' former employer and benefactor. Mr. Villefort kept insisting on the wedding despite what Noirtier wanted, and Madame Villefort kept on trying to dispose of the family. Her next victim was Noirtier. himself. But the old man had been taking small amounts of the poison to be resistant, and he survived the attempt. His attendant was not as lucky though, because he drank from leftover juice meant for Noirtier, and he also suffered a stroke and died. When the doctor came back, he was sure there was a murderer among them. He believed Valentine to be the one because she had an easy access and a motive for the murders. She would become rich, but they soon found out it was not the case when Madame Villefort tried to kill Valentine. Noirtier already suspected the stepmother to have killed the other grandparents. He administered a daily non-lethal dose for Valentine as well before the first attempt. It saved her life. Noirtier meanwhile was able to cancel France and Valentine's wedding. The old man had given him a detailed account signed by him of what happened to his father all these years ago. His father was a royalist during the time of Bonaparte's first exile. Noirtier was a leader of a Bonapartist conspiracy. The conspiracy had invited the general to recruit him to their cause. France's father had refused. The two men dueled and France's father lost his life. France did not wish to marry the granddaughter of his father's killer, and the wedding was off. Let's rewind a bit. The Count was instrumental in saving her life. Maximilien knew about there being a murderer. He asked the Count for help, and the Count did so by giving her an antidote every time Madame Villefort tried to kill her. He finally resorted to faking her death. There was even a funeral. The Count had put her in an artificial death state with one of his concoctions. But for Villefort, it couldn't be more clear then that his wife was killing everyone around him. He told her to die or disappear. She had killed his daughter and he didn't want to come out to the general public, so she had to go or he would make her go. All this misfortune really hadn't anything to do with the Count, but the Count was after something else. He wanted Villefort to lose his prestige and reputation, and he managed to do just that. You remember Benedetto? The Count had chosen him not only to fool and embarrass Danglars, but also to destroy Villefort. Benedetto was the talk of the town. An escaped convict had been able to infiltrate Parisian high society and kill a man near the Count of Monte Cristo's home. It was a big case and Villefort personally took care of it. It proved to be his ultimate humiliation. When they finally caught Benedetto and brought him before a judge, he told them not to execute him. Why? Because life was unfair for him. He recounted what happened to that fateful night between Villefort and Madame Danglars, how he was buried and saved by Bertuccio, and then brought to nuns before being adopted by Bertuccio's sister. He had intimate knowledge about what happened, like the wooden box he was placed in, the scar Bertuccio gave Villefort, and a napkin with his mother's initial. Madame Danglars and Villefort were both present and mortified. They just stood there in silence. The courtroom erupted and Villefort was disgraced. He returned home wanting to tell his wife it was okay, that he was no better than her, but it was too late. She had poisoned herself and his son. He cried while holding his son. The man was broken and left with no family as he believed his daughter to have died. His father also had left him. The Count was successful in his revenge and he managed to save the life of a young lady from this doomed family. Opponent number 3, Fernand. As I said, had obtained the reputation of a decorated soldier and he went on to become one of the peers of France. But that turned out to be a lie. The Count had investigated his past. Fernand was in the employ of Ali Pasha of Yanina, but he didn't fight heroically beside him until his demise. Fernand was the one to sell him out. He was charged to negotiate with the Turks. Instead, he received a sum of money to betray them. Ali Pasha died fighting while his daughter and mother stood there watching. Fernand received both women as slaves. He sold them into slavery. The Count managed to track her down and buy her from a slave dealer in Constantinople. He leaked this information in Paris as no one had known about this. The news first reached the ears of Danglars, who quickly started to distance himself from Fernand. The news was also reported in one of the Parisian newspapers. The papers described a French soldier named Fernand having betrayed the Pasha. Albert was furious when he read this news. He confronted one of his friends who worked for the paper to retract his news, even going as far as challenging him to a duel. The journalist Beauchamp did not write the piece, but he had proposed to go and investigate personally. If this Fernand had turned out to be someone else, the paper would have specified that and absolved Fernand. But Beauchamp returned with bad news for Albert. Albert was livid. His father had been summoned to explain the situation in Parliament amongst his peers. Albert looked for the culprit and found out it was the Count of Monte Cristo who had leaked the information. The Count wasn't hiding it either. It was time for his revenge on Fernand. A commission was created to investigate the accusations. Fernand defended himself. There was someone out to get him, he said. That there was no proof and no wrongdoing on his part. He would be shocked to see Haide as one of the witnesses. She had provided proof authenticating her royal lineage. The commission wanted to hear what she had to say. She told them everything about the betrayal, the human trafficking, and the deal he made with the Turks. Fernand fell silent. He had no comeback. The commission found him guilty of treason, theft, slavery, and military betrayal. He was stripped of all his titles and position as peer. His reputation was destroyed. Albert, who was a witness to his father's downfall, wanted to fight for the family honor, so he went looking for the Count of Monte Cristo. The Count was sitting in a lodge of the opera when Albert stormed in and threw a glove on the Count. Albert had caused a commotion, embarrassing the Count. Dantes could not let that slide and accepted the duel to death. They made an appointment and chose witnesses for that fateful day. Both men shared a mutual respect and deeper bond before this incident, but the Count did not budge an inch in this conviction that he would kill Albert until the arrival of Mercedes at his house. She had known it was Dantes in disguise the first time Albert brought him home, and she had come to plead for her son's life. Dantes fully showed up to the duel expecting to let himself be killed, but Albert did something more surprising. He apologized. Mercedes had told him everything about what happened to the Count and what his father had done. He returned home and Fernand discovered that the Count was still alive and that his son had apologized. He went to confront the Count himself. This is when Fernand discovered the truth. The Count and Dantes were one and the same person. A ghost from the past had returned to exact great vengeance upon him. Fernand was terrified and ran out of the door. He returned home to an empty house. Mercedes and Albert had left to never come back. Fernand's humiliation was complete. Moments later, a loud bang could be heard in the neighborhood. Fernand was no more. The Count's revenge was complete. So much so that he thought he might have done too much. This is how a nobleman with infinite money spun the block on his enemies in an epic revenge plot. Thank you for listening.